The monsoon fell like a question upon the earth. Beneath the banyan tree, Ananda, a young monk of 20, watched raindrops shatter on the temple steps. "If karma is justice," he whispered, "why do the kind suffer and the cruel prosper?" The wind answered only in silence. Far off, thunder echoed like the breath of unseen gods. A child cried in the village below, a sound sharp as truth. Elder Surya, a monk of 70, with eyes calm as still water, approached and stood beside him. "You see rain and think it falls to punish the soil," he said softly. "But what if rain only falls to make it grow?" The boy looked up. "Then why does it drown the poor man's field?" Surya smiled faintly, his robes moving in the storm's rhythm. "That, Ananda, is where your journey begins. Can peace walk through fear? Can understanding bloom from pain?" The lightning struck a tree beyond the hill, and Ananda flinched, unaware that his first lesson in karma had already begun. Dawn came quiet after the storm. The temple bells rang, echoing through mist. Ananda knelt beside the river, his reflection trembling with each ripple. "If karma is a mirror," he thought, "what face do I see? Mine or another's past?" Elder Surya approached with a bowl of rice, silent, watching the young monk wrestle with his thoughts. The river whispered its answer, but only those who stopped listening could hear it. Inside the temple, the sound of chanting filled the air like the heartbeat of the world. Ananda approached his teacher. "Master, if karma begins in thought, how can one ever be free?" Surya smiled, his silence speaking louder than any scripture. "Freedom begins," he finally said, "when thought no longer owns the heart." A cry pierced the air from below the hill. Mira, her sari still damp from yesterday's storm, carried her sick child to the temple gate. "Please," she pleaded, "if my suffering is karma, what did I do to deserve this?" Ananda froze. The question echoed his own heart. That night, the rain returned, softer now, as if the sky wept for them. Ananda stood watching droplets fall from the temple roof, each drop a silent story of cause and effect. Maybe karma, he thought, is not what follows us, but what we follow blindly. The storm faded into a hush that seemed to listen. Morning light broke across the temple courtyard, painting the wet stones gold. Ananda, 21 male, swept the rainwater aside with a bundle of palm leaves, but his thoughts weighed heavier than the storm had. Mira, 26, female, knelt nearby, watching over Arjun, 11, male, who coughed weakly in her lap. "Master," she whispered to Elder Surya, 71 male, "if karma is justice, must we wait for lifetimes before mercy comes?" Surya's voice was low, like wind through threads. "Mercy is not delayed by karma, Mira. Mercy is karma, when seen with the right eyes." Ananda paused mid-sweep, his gaze caught between compassion and confusion. The temple bell rang, but its echo carried more silence than sound. Inside the teaching hall, the disciples gathered. Oil lamps flickered like trembling hearts. Elder Surya, 71 male, began his parable. A man once planted seeds of anger, but prayed for flowers of peace. "Tell me, children, when the fruit came bitter, was it the tree's fault or the hand that sowed it?" The hall fell silent. Ananda, 21st male, lowered his gaze, feeling the sting of those words. His own doubts had been seeds, and already their roots had grown deep. Later that day, Ananda walked alone to the riverbank. The water reflected his face, then broke it apart with a passing ripple. "Am I the wave, or the reflection?" he murmured. The voice of Elder Surya echoed in his mind. "You are neither. Karma is the ripple, not the water, not the face. It moves because something moved first." As the wind stirred the reeds, Ananda felt a strange calm, as if understanding had briefly touched him, then vanished again like foam. That night, Thunder rolled again beyond the hills. The monks gathered under the roof, discussing what karma truly meant. Some spoke of destiny, others of punishment. Ananda, 21 male, rose. If karma is justice, he said, then who decides what is fair? Elder Surya, 71 male, looked at him for a long time. The one who suffers decides and learns. Karma does not punish, it teaches. A hush fell. Even the rain paused at the edge of the roof, listening. At dawn, the villagers brought offerings, fruits, rice, and bread baked by Mira. 26 female. She placed the loaf before Elder Surya, 71 male, but he turned to Ananda, 21 male, instead. Take it, he said, and give it back to her. Confused, Ananda handed the bread back, and Surya smiled. The hand that gives and the hand that receives are the same. What returns is never lost. For the first time, Ananda bowed not from duty, but from understanding. The rains had passed, leaving the air heavy with scent of wet soil. In the village below the temple, Mira, 27 female, watched her son, Arjun, 12 male, struggle with fever. Her face was pale, her sari clinging to her frame like grief itself. Is this his karma or mine? She whispered. When Ananda, 22 male, arrived carrying herbs, her eyes filled with both gratitude and accusation. You speak of peace, monk, she said bitterly, but peace cannot feed a child. Ananda hesitated, his voice trembling. Peace feeds the heart, not the stomach. Mira turned away, tears mixing with the sweat on her cheeks. From afar, Elder Surya, 72 male, watched them both, the lesson unfolding without his words. That evening, as the sun burned low, the villagers gathered around Mira's house. They whispered, her suffering is karma for a past unseen. Their words cut through her like blades. Ananda stood among them, unable to speak. Elder Surya approached the crowd. If your words cause pain, he said calmly, then your mouths are temples of ignorance. The crowd fell silent. The teacher's gaze softened, not in anger, but pity. When compassion dies, karma is reborn as cruelty. Night fell heavy. Mira sat beside her son, his breathing thin as a thread. Ananda prayed silently outside, his palms trembling. If karma is teaching, he whispered, then why must it teach through pain? Inside, Mira pressed her forehead to Arjun's hand. Take my karma instead, she sobbed. The wind outside howled through the thatch roof, and somewhere in the distance, thunder grumbled like an old god too tired to answer. Before dawn, Arjun's breath stopped. The silence was endless. Mira did not cry. She only stared at her child's still face, as if waiting for one more miracle. Ananda entered, carrying a small oil lamp. He placed it by the boy's head. Every light returns, he said softly. Not because it must, but because it chooses to. For the first time, Mira looked at him not with anger, but with the hollow eyes of understanding. Elder Surya, 72 male, appeared in the doorway. His body has ended, he said, but his intentions still walk beside you. At sunrise, Mira walked alone to the river, carrying her son's ashes. The sky glowed like a wound, healing in light. Ananda and Elder Surya followed in silence. As she released the ashes into the current, Mira whispered, let this be his last suffering. Surya placed a hand on her shoulder. No suffering is wasted when it becomes compassion. Ananda watched the ashes swirl away, his heart heavy yet strangely still. For the first time, he began to see karma not as a balance sheet, but as a mirror, showing the heart exactly what it holds. Days passed in silence. The temple bell sounded hollow. as if mourning with them. Ananda, 23, male, walked barefoot along the same river where Mira, 28, female, had released her son's ashes. The water sparkled like 1,000 unanswered prayers. "Master," he said softly to Elder Surya, 73, male, beside him. "I understand that karma teaches through experience, but why must it begin in pain?" Surya's robe fluttered in the wind. "Because pain is the one teacher we do not ignore," he said. Ananda bowed, his eyes moist. "Then suffering is sacred." "Only when it opens the heart," said Surya. "Otherwise it just repeats." Later that day, Ananda led a group of new monks in prayer. His voice was steady, but in his heart he felt a rising pride that he had understood something others had not. Elder Surya, watching from afar, sensed it. When the prayer ended, he called to him. "The ego hides even in virtue," he said quietly. Ananda frowned. "But I only wish to help." Surya nodded. "Then help without believing you are the helper." The words struck deeper than any rebuke. That evening a messenger arrived from a nearby monastery. The monks there had fallen ill from contaminated food. Ananda volunteered to go tend to them, confident in his devotion. As he walked into the forest carrying medicine, the path grew dark and slick with mud. He slipped, scattering the herbs into the dirt. In frustration, he struck the ground. "Even service fails," he cried. But the echo of his anger came back hollow, a mirror of the pride he carried. The forest listened in silence, its stillness heavier than any punishment. When Ananda returned to the temple empty-handed, Elder Surya, 73, male, met him with gentle eyes. "Did you fail, Ananda?" he asked. "Yes," Ananda replied, ashamed. "The herbs are lost." The old monk smiled faintly. "Then your lesson is found." Confused, Ananda stared. "What lesson?" Surya turned toward the river. "The world doesn't punish mistakes. It repeats them until we see them. Karma waits not to strike, but to awaken." That night, Ananda sat alone beneath the banyan tree, where his questions had once begun. The wind was cool, the stars reflected in puddles from the day's rain. He whispered, "The world does not revolve around justice, but around understanding." His voice trembled, then steadied. Elder Surya's words echoed in memory. "The wheel turns not to trap you, but to show where you still stand." As dawn crept over the horizon, Ananda bowed deeply, not to the gods, but to the unseen law that held all things together. The monsoon ended, leaving the river calm and wide as the sky itself. Ananda, 25, male, sat on its bank, robes faded from years of sun, face lean with quiet discipline. Elder Surya, 75, male, stood nearby watching the water's slow dance. "Master," Ananda said softly, "for years I have studied karma. I have tried to do right, to think right, yet still I feel the storm inside." Surya smiled. "The storm is not wrong, my son. It shows that you still live. The task is not to still the water, but to see your reflection clearly even when it moves." Ananda looked down. The river rippled with his trembling face, and for the first time, he smiled back at it. While walking along the river, Ananda, 25, male, met an old fisherman mending his net. "Monk," said the fisherman, "you speak of karma, yet the fish still die in my traps. Am I doomed?" Ananda paused, then smiled faintly. "The trap is not in your hands," he said, "but in your heart. Catch only what you can love, and you will set it free." The fisherman nodded slowly. "Then today I will throw one back." As the fish slipped into the current, it shimmered like forgiveness made visible. At midday, Ananda rested under an ancient bodhi tree. Birds nested above, the leaves shimmering in sunlight. He watched the breeze move through branches without breaking a single leaf. So that is how karma moves, he thought, without violence, shaping without forcing. Elder Surya approached, smiling. You hear the same truth I heard when I was your age, he said. We learn not by changing the wind, but by letting it pass through without clinging. The two monks sat together in silence, the tree whispering the lesson only patience could hear. At dusk, clouds mirrored themselves on the river's glassy surface. Ananda watched their shapes change, fading into colorless peace. Master, he said, how can something so vast hold its own reflection? Elder Surya replied, the river doesn't hold the sky, it becomes it. When you stop separating what is seen from who sees, that is when karma ends. The words dissolved into wind, and the world seemed to vanish into one endless reflection. That night, Ananda meditated under the stars. The sound of the river faded until he could not tell if it still flowed or if the sound came from within him. He remembered every face. Meera, 29, female. Her sorrow. Arjun, 13, male. His fragile smile. Elder Surya, 75, male. His patient gaze. All the voices blended into one quiet truth. Nothing is owned. Nothing is lost. Karma was not a law outside him. It was the rhythm of awareness itself. As the first bird sang, dawn spread like forgiveness across the sky. Seasons changed. The temple walls were covered in moss, and Ananda, 30 male, had grown into quiet strength. His steps were measured, his eyes gentler. Yet inside he still felt a knot. That last ache of self, the silent wish to be free. Elder Surya, 80 male, noticed. You carry your understanding like a chain, he said softly. You wish to master karma, but who is this? You that learns? Ananda bowed, heart heavy. Then who is left, master? Only the seeing, Surya replied, and the seen vanishes. The wind swept across the courtyard, scattering dry leaves like forgotten desires. One morning, Elder Surya collapsed while sweeping the temple steps. His breath was shallow, his skin pale. Ananda, 30, male, rushed to him. Master, please rest, Surya smiled faintly. Even this body is a borrowed robe, my son. The thread unravels when it's time. Ananda's eyes filled with tears. Without you, I cannot walk the path. Surya's hand trembled as he touched his disciple's cheek. Then it was never mine you walked. His smile lingered, even as his eyes fluttered closed. That evening, Elder Surya lay on a mat beneath the same banyan tree where his teachings had begun. The air was still. Ananda sat by his side, holding a bowl of water. Master, he whispered, what becomes of karma when life ends? The old monk smiled faintly. It ends when life is understood, not when it stops. His breathing slowed. Do not mourn the leaf that falls, he said, for it feeds the root unseen. With one last breath, Surya entered the silence he had always taught. After the cremation, the temple felt vast and hollow. Ananda, 30, male, walked through its silent corridors, hearing echoes of his master's voice in every footstep. He stopped before Surya's seat. Empty now, save for an oil lamp flickering low. The teacher has gone, he murmured, but the teaching remains. For a long time, he simply breathed. The silence did not hurt anymore. It felt alive. At dawn, Ananda returned to the river. The water shimmered as if waiting. He knelt and released a handful of ashes. The last remains of his master's robe. You once said the river teaches everything, he whispered. Now I see. It teaches letting go. As the ashes swirled into the current, Ananda felt something inside him loosen, like a rope untying after years of silence. The river's surface broke into countless ripples, and for the first time, each one looked like freedom. Years passed like whispers through bamboo, Ananda, 45, male, now the elder of the temple, walked the same stone paths once swept by Surya, 80, male. His beard had grown thin and gray. His eyes were clear as the river in winter. Around him gathered new monks, faces young, questions bright. One asked, "Master, is karma a punishment or a blessing?" Ananda smiled, the same smile his teacher once gave him. "It is neither," he said. "It is the echo of your own heart. What you hear depends on how you speak." The monks bowed deeply, not to the words, but to the silence that followed. One afternoon, a weary traveler came to the temple. Mira, 50, female. Hair streaked with silver, eyes calm but marked by years of loss and labor. She bowed before Ananda, who recognized her instantly. "Your son's smile is in your eyes," he said softly. She nodded. "And your master's voice is in yours." She placed a clay bowl of rice before the altar. "I came not to pray," she said, "but to thank the life that hurt me, for showing me how to love." Tears glimmered on both their cheeks, but neither called them sorrow. That evening, Ananda gathered his monks by lamplight. The Buddha said karma is not the law of others, but the law of seeing, he began. If your mind is cruel, even kindness becomes harm. If your mind is kind, even pain becomes a bridge. He paused, looking toward the river beyond the temple walls. You are not bound by what happens to you, only by what you refuse to understand. The fire crackled. The monks bowed silently, the flame reflecting in their eyes like countless suns awakening. In the still hours before dawn, Ananda walked alone to the river. The mist curled low and the water shimmered faintly in moonlight. He cupped his hands and poured water back into itself. "Master," he whispered into the current, "the wheel has turned, and I no longer see its rim." He closed his eyes. The river's murmur became his breath, his heart, his teacher's laughter. The sound was not outside him anymore. It was home. When the sun rose, Ananda returned to the temple for the last time. The monks found him seated beneath the banyan tree, eyes open, body still, smile gentle, like dawn itself had chosen to rest in him. They called softly, but he did not move. Birds sang above, and a single leaf drifted down, landing upon his lap. Mira, 50 female, watched from afar, hands folded. "The river has found the sea," she whispered. The bell tolled once, then silence filled the world, vast, clear, eternal.